They thought it was just another isolated death in the mountains. But what scientists discovered in 2023 about a 5,300-year-old mummy turned everything we believed about ancient Europe completely upside down. High in the Ötztal Alps, where the Austrian-Italian border cuts through frozen peaks, a secret waited in the ice for over 5 millennia. When hikers Erika and Helmut Simon spotted what looked like a recent climbing accident in September 1991, they had no clue they were staring at one of archaeology's most game-changing discoveries. The body emerging from the melting glacier wasn't wearing modern gear. Instead, this figure clutched a copper axe and wore grass-stuffed leather shoes that screamed ancient craftsmanship. The corpse was perfectly preserved, leathery but intact, like nature's own time capsule. Carbon dating soon delivered the shocking news. This man had been frozen since around 3300 BCE, making him Europe's oldest natural mummy. They called him Ötzi, after the valley where he was found, but nobody could predict how dramatically his story would evolve. Forensic analysis revealed Ötzi didn't die peacefully. At 45 years old, standing just 5'3" and weighing 110 pounds, he was surprisingly robust for his era. His body told a tale of violence that would make any crime scene investigator's blood run cold. An arrowhead was lodged deep in his left shoulder, having severed a major artery. His hand bore defensive wounds. Blood from 4 different people stained his belongings, suggesting a brutal fight before his death. This wasn't just any ancient man. Ötzi carried sophisticated tools that revealed unexpected technological advancement. His copper axe alone was worth a fortune in his time, marking him as someone of significant status. The 61 tattoos covering his body weren't decorative, but therapeutic, placed precisely over arthritic joints like an ancient form of medical treatment. Everything about Ötzi challenged assumptions about prehistoric life. His clothing was expertly crafted from various animals. Keep the voice steady and informative with light emphasis on important facts. Use smooth pacing and make it feel like an expert guiding a tour of knowledge. When scientists first sequenced Ötzi's genome in 2012, the results seemed to rewrite European prehistory. The analysis suggested he had light skin, brown eyes, and, most shocking of all, steppe ancestry. This genetic signature was associated with Indo-European peoples who weren't supposed to reach Central Europe until centuries after Ötzi's death. The discovery pushed back migration timelines and suggested much earlier population movements than anyone had imagined. Museums rushed to create reconstructions showing a pale, European-looking man. Documentaries spread this image worldwide. Ötzi became the poster child for ancient European ancestry, a genetic bridge connecting modern populations to their prehistoric roots. Scientists celebrated what appeared to be a revolutionary finding that challenged everything they thought they knew about ancient migration patterns. But there was a problem. A massive, embarrassing problem that wouldn't surface for over a decade. By 2023, DNA sequencing technology had evolved dramatically. What had been experimental and error-prone in 2012 was now precise and reliable. A new research team from the Max Planck Institute for Evolutionary Anthropology decided to re-examine Ötzi's genome using cutting-edge methods and bone samples from his hip, an area less susceptible to contamination. When the new results came in, researchers reportedly stared at their data in disbelief. The steppe ancestry that had caused such excitement? It was completely gone. The earlier findings had been contaminated with modern DNA, creating a false genetic signature that misled the entire scientific community for over a decade. The steppe ancestry is completely gone, revealed the new analysis. The reason for the inaccuracy? The original sample had been contaminated with modern DNA. This wasn't just a minor correction. It was a complete overthrow of everything scientists thought they knew about Ötzi's heritage. The real Ötzi was genetically nothing like what the world had been. I have a question for you. First, I would like to say that it is possible to follow the greatest curiosities of our world every day. But to do so, you need to be subscribed to our channel. So, are you already subscribed? If not, take the opportunity to subscribe now. Also, take the opportunity to like the video, so YouTube will recommend more videos from our channel. So leave your like right now. And now that you have done that, let's go! Keep the voice steady and informative, with light emphasis on important facts. Use smooth pacing, and make it feel like an expert guiding a tour of knowledge. About 90% of Ötzi's genetic heritage comes from Neolithic farmers, specifically Anatolian farmers who had migrated from modern-day Turkey into Europe around 8,000 years ago. Only about 8% of his DNA came from local European hunter-gatherers. This made Ötzi incredibly unusual. Most other Copper Age Europeans showed much more genetic mixing between different populations. Ötzi represented an almost pure lineage of these early farmers, preserved like a genetic fossil in the Alpine mountains. His ancestors had brought agriculture, pottery, and domesticated animals to Europe, fundamentally transforming human society from nomadic hunting to settled farming. But here's where the story gets really wild. Ötzi's closest living genetic relatives aren't found in Austria or northern Italy, where he died. They're on the Mediterranean island of Sardinia, hundreds of miles away. The Sardinians, due to their geographic isolation, avoided many of the later genetic mixing events that swept across mainland Europe. They preserved the same Anatolian farmer ancestry that Ötzi carried, making them his genetic cousins across 5 millennia. The new genetic analysis didn't just correct Ötzi's ancestry, it completely transformed how he looked. All those museum reconstructions showing a pale, light-eyed European? Totally wrong. The study allows new conclusions to be drawn about his health and appearance, especially regarding his skin color and hair. Ötzi actually had dark skin, significantly darker than most modern Europeans. His eyes were brown, not the assumed blue, and genetic markers revealed he was balding, a detail encoded right in his DNA. This revelation forced an uncomfortable reckoning with how we visualize prehistoric Europeans. The artistic reconstructions, though created with good intentions, reflected modern biases rather than ancient reality. Seeing Ötzi's true face challenged deeply held assumptions about race. His DNA carried mutations associated with heart disease, type 2 diabetes, lactose intolerance, and obesity. Further surprising hereditary characteristics that the study revealed include risks for obesity and adult-onset diabetes. However, these probably never developed due to his highly active lifestyle. Beyond genetic predispositions, his body showed signs of actual suffering. He battled gallstones, stomach ulcers, and was infected with Lyme disease, making him the oldest known human case of this tick-borne illness. Parasites crawled through his intestines, and signs of chronic inflammation suggested a man fighting constant pain. His therapeutic tattoos took on new meaning. They weren't decorative, but desperate attempts to manage arthritis and chronic pain through primitive medical treatment. Ötzi was a walking catalog of human vulnerability, carrying diseases that still plague us today. Perhaps most haunting of all, Ötzi represented a genetic lineage that was dying out. His unusually pure Anatolian farmer ancestry suggests he belonged to an isolated mountain community that had avoided mixing with incoming populations. While this preserved their ancient genetic heritage, it also made them vulnerable. He retained the highest percentage of Anatolian farmer ancestry found in any Copper Age European. This genetic isolation wasn't sustainable. Small, isolated populations accumulate harmful mutations and lose genetic diversity needed for long-term survival. Ötzi's lineage was essentially a genetic island, cut off from the evolutionary advantages of population mixing. The evidence suggests these mountain communities were gradually being overwhelmed by demographic changes sweeping across Europe. Ötzi wasn't an ancestor of modern Europeans, but rather a representative of a population branch that was vanishing. His genetic signature, once widespread, survived only in places like Sardinia that remained geographically isolated. Ötzi's final hours painted a picture of desperation and conflict. His weapons were carefully maintained and recently repaired, indicating he expected trouble. The fatal arrow strike from behind suggested ambush or betrayal. Someone had deliberately removed the arrow shaft, leaving only the deadly tip embedded in his shoulder. Blood from multiple individuals on his belongings hinted at a complex, violent encounter involving several people. His death wasn't random. It represented the collapse of an ancient world, where isolated mountain communities could no longer maintain their traditional ways of life. Ötzi died as waves of demographic and cultural change swept across Europe, carrying away populations that had remained unchanged for millennia. Ötzi's story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of jumping to conclusions in ancient DNA research. The contamination that misled scientists for over a decade highlighted how easily exciting discoveries can be wrong. Since that first study, not only have sequencing technologies advanced enormously, but many more genomes of other prehistoric Europeans have been fully decoded, providing context that wasn't available in 2012. The field learned to be more cautious, implementing rigorous contamination controls and requiring multiple independent confirmations of surprising findings. Ötzi's corrected genome became a foundation for understanding how ancient European populations really evolved, replacing romantic myths with complex scientific reality. The revelation about Ötzi's true ancestry forced a complete re-evaluation of European prehistoric demographics. Instead of being a genetic bridge to modern populations, he represented extinct lineages that were replaced during later migrations. His Anatolian farmer heritage demonstrated how early agricultural populations established themselves across Europe, but were eventually absorbed or replaced by subsequent waves of migration. Recent studies have identified other Copper Age individuals with similar genetic profiles. His weapons were carefully maintained and recently repaired, indicating he expected trouble. The fatal arrow strike from behind suggested ambush or betrayal. Someone had deliberately removed the arrow shaft, leaving only the deadly tip embedded in his shoulder. Blood from multiple individuals on his belongings hinted at a complex, violent encounter involving several people. His death wasn't random. It represented the collapse of an ancient world, where isolated mountain communities could no longer maintain their traditional ways of life. Ötzi died as waves of demographic and cultural change swept across Europe, carrying away populations that had remained unchanged for millennia. Ötzi's story became a cautionary tale about the dangers of jumping to conclusions in ancient DNA research. The contamination that misled scientists for over a decade highlighted how easily exciting discoveries can be wrong. Since that first study, not only have sequencing technologies advanced enormously, but many more genomes of other prehistoric Europeans have been fully decoded, providing context that wasn't available in 2012. The field learned to be more cautious, implementing rigorous contamination controls and requiring multiple independent confirmations of surprising findings. Ötzi's corrected genome became a foundation for understanding how ancient European populations really evolved, replacing romantic myths with complex scientific reality. The revelation about Ötzi's true ancestry forced a complete re-evaluation of European prehistoric demographics.
Instead of being a genetic bridge to modern populations, he represented extinct lineages that were replaced during later migrations. His Anatolian farmer heritage demonstrated how early agricultural populations established themselves across Europe, but were eventually absorbed or replaced by subsequent waves of migration. Recent studies have identified other Copper Age individuals with similar genetic profiles.
We analyzed an additional 15 Copper Age individuals, and they have the same genetic structure as the Iceman, researchers found, indicating that his population was more widespread than initially thought. The transformation in ancient DNA analysis between 2012 and 2023 represented a quantum leap in scientific capability. Early sequencing was like trying to read a book that had been shredded and scattered in the wind. Modern techniques can piece together tiny fragments with incredible precision, while detecting and eliminating contamination that would have been invisible to earlier methods. This technological revolution didn't just correct Ötzi's story. It opened up entirely new possibilities for understanding human prehistory. Scientists can now extract genetic information from increasingly degraded samples, pushing back the timeline of what's possible to analyze. Ötzi's story reveals uncomfortable truths about how scientific narratives develop and spread. The original findings aligned with existing expectations about European ancestry, making them easier to accept despite methodological limitations. When those findings were corrected, they challenged not just scientific understanding, but cultural assumptions about identity and heritage. The Iceman forced a reckoning with how we project modern biases onto ancient peoples. His dark skin and different genetic heritage didn't fit comfortable narratives about European continuity. The corrected science demanded acceptance of a more complex, less familiar version of prehistoric reality. Just when scientists thought they had figured out Ötzi's story, 2025 delivered another bombshell discovery that completely transformed our ancient world. Researchers analyzed the DNA of 47 other individuals who lived alongside Ötzi in the Austrian Tyrol between 6400 and 1300 BC, spanning from the Mesolithic to the Middle Bronze Age. The results were absolutely stunning. Like Ötzi, 80 to 90% of these individuals shared the same Anatolian farmer ancestry. But here's where it gets really interesting. Their genetic profiles were
Keep the voice steady and informative, with light emphasis on important facts. Use smooth pacing and make it feel like an expert guiding a tour of knowledge. While they all descended from those ancient Turkish farmers, their ancestry differed markedly from Ötzi's specific genetic signature. This discovery shattered the narrative that Ötzi represented a completely isolated genetic island. His neighbors shared his basic heritage, but had different family lineages and genetic mixing patterns. The Alpine communities weren't as cut off from the world as previously thought, but they maintained distinct genetic subgroups that evolved separately within the same geographical region. Recent analysis of Ötzi's preserved stomach contents revealed another shocking discovery that modern health researchers are still trying to fully understand. The discovery of the gut microbe Prevotella copri in the Iceman indicates a far more diverse gut microbiome than that found in the Western world today. This finding has profound implications for understanding how modern lifestyle changes have dramatically altered human gut health. Ötzi's digestive system hosted bacterial communities that have largely disappeared from industrialized populations, suggesting that our ancestors had much more diverse and potentially healthier gut ecosystems. The preserved bacteria in his intestines provide a 5,300-year-old snapshot of what human digestion was like before processed foods, antibiotics, and modern sanitation practices fundamentally altered our internal microbial landscapes. Scientists are now studying these ancient bacterial signatures to understand what we've lost and potentially how to restore healthier gut diversity. The 2025 study of Ötzi's alpine neighbors revealed fascinating insights into prehistoric social organization that challenge modern assumptions about ancient communities. The study of prehistoric skeletons from the Italian Alps shows that society may have been organized around fathers, and that Ötzi the Iceman had a unique family lineage. Evidence suggests these mountain communities practiced patrilocal residence patterns, where wives moved to live with their husbands' families.
The Iceman remains science's greatest gift from the ancient past, a perfectly preserved window into a world we're still learning to understand.
Still curious? Then don't stop now. The next mystery is already waiting for you. Just click the video on screen. I saved it just for you. See you there, curious one.